Now, as we reflect on Nigeria's democratic progress, it's essential to consider the country's complex history from colonization to military rule and then a transition into democracy in 1999. And despite progress in consolidating democratic institution processes, challenges still persist, including corruption, electoral violence, and ethnic tensions. Now, recent developments in Nigeria's political scene have also raised important questions about the country's democratic trajectory. The role of institutions such as the electoral commissions and the judiciary is critical in ensuring the integrity of the democratic process. Meanwhile, the impact of regional and ethnic dynamics on voting patterns and political alliances cannot be overstated. Now, to dive deeper into the country's democratic journey, we have Dr. Dauda Garuba, the Director of the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thanks for inviting me, please.
And Happy New Year, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Well,
all right. What's your assessment of Nigeria's democracy, and our democratic development since 1999, the transition to civilian rule? What's your assessment of it? Are we developing or declining or stagnated? What's your take on it?
Well, we want to say that there are mixed feelings about this, but the fact also remains that, like we normally put it in the popular parlance, the worst of democratic system is better than the best of military regime. So, to that extent, yes, we've transited successfully from military rule in 1999, and we've had our own challenges, like baby steps that are often taken in terms of this is the first time in the history of the country that we are having this length of time practicing democracy. I mean, this is 26th year now, uninterrupted. So in that case, you want to say that, yes, we may not have had it all, but the fact remains that we have a process that is ongoing, and we also have a responsibility as citizens of the country to ensure that the democracy deliver the dividends that we want. So it's not the responsibility of the politicians alone to do this, and this way I've often argued that politics, as you see it, is too big to be left to politicians alone, because it's what determines everything we get. So in that context, the idea of sit down look is not what we should bring into democracy. All hands must be on deck to get democracy to deliver the other side of it, which is actually supposed to be the outcome. That's development. So it's in that context that CDD especially is out there to always push the bar with respect to what we should do for the country.
I like your opening statements because it hits very critically at something I also hold very dear, which is active citizenry. As you have pointed out, shifting away from the sit-down look syndrome. Is this something that the politicians understand and the people don't? That we pay more price when we sit down look than when we actively participate in governance? And so what it appears to be is that politicians have sought to have more of us sit down look, and we don't seem to be making efforts to wake up and participate. Where do you think this problem really lies?
I think the fact remains that the politicians actually appreciate the power of the people to shape things the way they want it. But what seems to have been an approach by the politicians is to weaponize poverty. And in the midst of these, the citizens get disenchanted and disillusioned, and this is what has brought us to this point. So what you find these days is, my vote don't count, and even if I don't, so when you get to that point where you've given up hope, then you provide the opportunities for the politicians who are, the greatest beneficiaries of this inactiveness. So it's in that context that I think that the citizens, rather than choose the option of sit down look, should rather be much more interested in what is happening in their affairs, because at the end of the day, is Google in, is Giggle, garbage in, garbage out. So if you are not offering democracy the somewhat what I would call the nourishes that it requires, you are obviously not going to get anything out of it. So at every particular point in time, the citizens ought to put the politicians on their toes, the political class, to ensure that they deliver on the promises they are making to the citizens, and also ensure that the alternative solution to getting them to do that is, if they don't do it, you vote them out of power. Yeah, people say the votes don't count, but what I keep telling the people today, in spite of the introduction of technology and other things to deal with issue of elections, politicians are still going out to buy votes. And that is the key issue today that we have not been able to address, vote buying. If the votes don't count, why is somebody paying for them? So this is an area that the citizens should take very seriously.
All right. I'm actually enjoying this conversation this morning, but would you say that mindset of sit down look is gradually changing? I mean, we see a lot of people talking on social media, actually, wanting to participate more in governance, wanting to call, their leaders out via social media. But how can we move that away from social media, being that there's a certain level of awareness for people on social? How can we move that to transcend to regular Nigerians on the streets, in villages and communities, to get them to be aware and take away the sit down look mindsets, from them?
I think what is central in this is participation. Yes, there are various ways through which people contribute to democracy, and the social media is also one of it. Whether you like it or not, you will not be able to take it off there. Some people have felt this sense of exclusion, that they think that the only instrument or tool they have is that social media. Then the politicians may think that the only tool they have is the center stage of where the things are happening.
The theater.
But again, the fact is that we need to take the issue of participation seriously, engaging on all fronts, be it the social media, be in one-on-one, be in interaction with politically conscious. They are conscious. The politicians are conscious of what is happening. Sure. But the fact is that they want to keep you perpetually under control. And that is where the issue of the weaponization of poverty comes in. So beyond the social media, we need to move a step further to ensure that these guys, they owe us a responsibility, and that responsibility is to deliver on what makes the common good. And that is what actually differentiates Nigeria from other countries where we think democracy is working. It requires a perpetual engagement. You need to put the politicians on their toe. You must not allow them to have the breathing space. If you are not doing that, we are surrendering our own future. We are surrendering the destiny of this country. And for us, that is essential, and we must buy in. I know quite a lot of things have happened in the last couple of years. Moving towards the 2023 elections, a lot was invested in the process, getting to reawaken citizens to their initial, vow not to go back to elections because it doesn't count. And immediately after the 2023 elections, people also felt disillusioned. And now you are going to have civil society going back to the basis to begin to also see how you can reawaken the consciousness in the citizens, because some even have gone to the point of even destroying their voters' card, that they are no longer interested. But you leave it at that. These guys are still going to be determining what happens to you. The economy, if you think that you can isolate politics and you are, let me face my business or let me face XYZ I'm doing. The fact is that all these are regulated by politics. True. So as long as all other sectors are regulated by politics, we must put an eye on what is happening in the politics if we want to get it right on the other side. So it is in this context that I made the argument that politics is too big to be left to politicians alone.
Doctor, before you came into the studio, we had the phone-in sessions where we also threw out the same questions to gauge the perception of Nigerians. Why people, just as you would readily admit, that we seem to have made some progress with successive democratic transition since 1999. They seem to identify certain areas where it appears that every time we make progress, development in those sectors or subsectors, sort of hold us back or prevent us from trusting further than we could. They mentioned the judiciary, they mentioned INEC. Do you agree with these assumptions?
I completely agree. An election, for instance, should be seen as free, fair, and credible, not only in the eyes of the election management body, but also the people who are the electorate must also see the process or to be free, fair, and credible. The other bit is that if you were to take a look at the elections we've had since 1999, we have very crazy flaws in some of those elections. But also the fact remains that what has consistently become a challenge now is that for every elections, there are the other side of it, the judiciary playing a big role who, how the outcome is determined. Our experiences with other countries is that when elections happen, you find the loser accepting the results and congratulating the winner. I was in Ghana for the December 7th election, even before the voting got concluded. The
major contender,
the ruling party, vice president, who has all the machinery to cause trouble, assuming they want to, called the opposition and considered the result, and because they also have their own machinery for monitoring voting. And as at that time, results were already coming out from the various constituencies and who the parliamentarians that were winning and all those things. At the end, they realized that they cannot. Just before walking in, I heard you people discuss one of the Southeast case where the fourth person emerged as the governor. And these are, they have done their own analysis and they have seen where the numbers are going, how the parliamentarians are being elected, and on their own concluded that this was going to. They did that. And the man did it at a time when tension was beginning to mount, because they've never had a history of taking such a length before results are out. And as that was also happening, the electoral management body head also came out to address the nation about the challenges they are facing and reassuring the citizens that things are going to go well. So in that context, you say it. So as it is today, I don't think our democracy is progressing if the citizens will have to sit down and vote, and after voting, we start waiting for the judiciary to vote, to cast the final vote, because they actually now determine. So our democracy is gradually becoming a democracy by the courts. So that is all elections by the courts. So that is what it is. We are supposed to finish our votes and get all the results out, getting parties congratulating one another and moving on. And that's how to build a country. So we need to do something radically different from what we've witnessed over the years, moving towards 2027.
Some of the callers also identified separation of power and rule of law. We have seen, with the benefit of hindsight, how the National Assembly has almost transitioned into an extended arm of the judiciary.
Yes.
It has become a more or less a say hi kind of house to just about everything that comes from the executive, even when there are public outcry about some of those public policy. Have we seen the best version of a parliament with regards to separation of power in these 26 years?
Certainly no, but we must also underscore the fact that all over the world, you don't conduct elections and ordinarily expect having the elected chief executive now, expect the parliament to do their business the way they want it. They are usually interested in who becomes the
speaker,
the Senate president, and all those things. It's normal. Even in the US, in their elections, it happens. And I think the only time I saw that happening in Nigeria was the 2015 elections, when Buhari emerged, and he then saw well, it's not, I don't care who becomes who has this, but at the end, he also paid for it because of what we saw. But the fact is that the level of desperation in ensuring that the choice of the chief executive at the level of the legislation should happen is the anomaly in our own situation. So for us, there should still be some level of decency in doing that. And the only thing that is expected is that at whatever level, when you become the Senate president, you become the Speaker of the House, things have transcended parties. You have the constituency now, your country now becomes your constituency. So it is in this context that people have raised concerns about what is happening, whether our democracy is actually deepening. So I strongly believe that we'll certainly be able to do better if we look at the indices and also be able to pursue the right agenda, putting citizens as the central focus of our democracy. So far, we are lacking in that area.
All right, let's talk about corruption. One of the things our callers mentioned was corruption. And for every time they talk about corruption, I'll be like, would you say that's a long road for Nigeria when it comes to strengthening our democracy? Nigerians lack trust in public office holders and how corrupt it could be over there. So where does this put us, especially in our fight against corruption and our democratic process?
Yes, but I also need to underscore one thing. Corruption is a global thing. Even the biggest democracy you think of, like for instance, America, I even don't know now whether it's actually the biggest democracy. But the fact remains that corruption is everywhere. But I think also we have also pushed it beyond acceptable margins for the country. And it is already deepening poverty. And to this extent, you want to say that we need to do something about it. But the fact is that corruption fits in a society where democracy is not deepened. Because a society where democracy is deepened, there is rule of law, there is free speech, there is freedom of association, and talk about it. And if you do all this, the tendencies that development will accrue from all those practices is there. But if you have a system that the citizens are the mercy of those who occupy political power, then you certainly have issues. So I think issues about corruption, people used to say that, yeah, corruption is a problem. For me, the biggest problem the country faces now is impunity. I will do it, nothing will happen. People go ahead and do it and nothing happens. We are no longer frightened by figures, if you take a look at it. What you see now is people are stealing billions. And billions are so much that for every billion that is taken from the country, is a denial of development for the people. So in this context, if you ask me, we should first of all even fight impunity before we come back to fight corruption. If we fight impunity, what happens these days, you do it, when you are being taken to court, people are holding their victory fingers on the way to court for arraignment. So these are some of the key challenges we face in our country.
Talking about impunity, loads of questions have been raised, not just in the 1.5 year or thereabout of this administration, but also in the 8 years of the immediate past administration on the question of nepotism. They think it's one reason why we have deepened some of the things you have observed. You come into power and it does appear that the only people who can do the job are people who share the same regional extraction, people of the same regional extraction as yourself. And because they also see themselves as parakpo, as Yoruba people will call it, it then appears that even if they do anything wrong, nobody can call them to order, because the argument would then be that you are raising questions because the man at the helm of affair is not from your local government or from your own side of the divide. How much, from your own observation, of a challenge is the argument around nepotism?
Of course, there's a huge challenge around that. And let's just take a simple example. We had all these arguments and everything towards the election. The elections has happened. And like I said, if you become elected, you've transcended being a party candidate and you have become the president of the country or the governor of a state or even the chairman of a local government. You are no longer, how do I call it, limited to a small constituency, which then also requires that in all your decisions, in all your steps, even in policy formulation, you should be focusing benefit for all. So that is what it's supposed to be. But even those who have had issues around this now, looking at the challenges we face since February, there is no market for the APC. Neither is there a market for the PDP. There is no Yoruba market. There is no Hausa market. There is no Igbo market. There is no Edo market, even as an Edo man that I. So everybody is drinking from the same cup now. So in that context, if we all collaborate and join hands together, there is no market for the Muslim or the Christian or the African traditional. So the general good of the people is what the political class need to pursue at all times. So except if we are not doing this, we are certainly all going to be facing the same problem, the same challenges, the same poverty. As it is in Sokoto, so it is in Ebonyi, so it is in Oyo. So this is the problem we have, and that is why we need. I think there is a country I think that we should also emulate in all this. Ghana is one country that has those things. There is a general consensus on where the country should not be taken with respect to the issue. For instance, I give you one example. This is the first time in the history of Ghana that you're having a Muslim contesting for presidency. You get it? But if we are, for elections that have been held in this country, as you are thinking of a Muslim president, you are thinking of a vice president Christian. So these are all the things. And which then also means that even the level of trust we have in ourselves and the system is very, very low.
All right, Doctor, I wish we had time to continue to explore, some of those questions that have become obvious in our 26-year journey. You will have 20 seconds to then give me a better view of your perception. Are we making progress?
Well, we agree.
Or are we reclining?
Well, we agree that since the transition happened in 1999, there have been some modicum of progress that we have recorded. And if you don't want to appreciate that, take a look at what is happening in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and in Niger today. Freedom of speech is frozen in those countries. And we have made, if alone we are able to discuss all this, I think we've made progress. But the fact also remains that we are, in recent time, we are going below the bar. And that is why we put in place a 2-day conference day before yesterday and yesterday on strengthening democracy in the country.
Okay, my directors would practically beat down my ears for time now. Thank you very much, Dr. Dauda Garuba, the Director of Center for Democracy and Development, for finding time to join us in the studio and help us expand the conversation that took place in the last 2 days by putting, a synopsis to all of the conversations that took place. Thank you very much once again for making it to the studio.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.